What is going on, people? Welcome back to the topics. It is your boy Mac here once more with my lovely friend Mila. How you doing?
Good
Good.
day. How are you? I am great.
Great.
I'm ready. I'm ready to get into this.
Awesome. Yeah. It's been a minute since we did our last one.
It
Uh,
has.
couple or a little moving and shaking on my end. So hopefully we could make this a little bit more consistent. But yeah, we're back with a really good topic today. I think it's pretty interesting. At least we're talking about vaccine patents, which is a really interesting topic. Didn't really think that it would kind of didn't think that vaccine patents would be a problem, in a global pandemic. So why don't you kind of get us started?
Yeah. There's been a lot of news about this lately, at least, from where I, hear the news. Basically, we've had a lot of pushback from richer countries of sharing patents with the vaccine. And the way I came to this, or the way that I kind of heard about it and understood it, was from a distribution standpoint. And basically, just being able to provide the vaccine for COVID-19 throughout the world so that, everybody is protected from it if they want to be. And I'm going to go ahead and share something real quick just so that we all have kind of a picture, an idea of what's in mind. If you are on, if you're listening to this and you're not watching the video, you're just going to miss out on this glorious image. So give me just a second. Okay.
We'll describe it.
So this was a map provided by Bloomberg. It just kind of shows the stance on waiving a patent protection for COVID-19 vaccines. Pink being opposed, yellow being in support of waiving the patent, and blue being undecided. So
what does
as it
patent
says down,
protections actually do? Like, what is a waiving the patents actually do? Oh, does
it basically makes the vaccine accessible to be manufactured outside of um, outside of the capacity that we're manufacturing it now. And it also gives it just makes it to where we can produce more quicker. So I'm going to read this note just so people who are listening can hear this. Supporters include countries sponsoring or state general support for patent waiver. A patent gives a drug maker exclusive rights to manufacture a vaccine it developed. So if the vaccine was developed in the US, then a patent would make it to where they have exclusive rights to distribute it, or to provide the patent, or to manufacture it in other places.
right? Okay.
So that it can be shared and distributed on a wider scale. I'm going to go ahead and leave that because we can talk about so much else, because that's when it really starts to get complicated. When I saw that, when I started reading about this, in my head, it makes sense to be able to have a way to protect people from COVID-19, but also to stop the spread, because as it spreads, it's able to mutate and become stronger. And then it could ultimately render the solution we have now obsolete. And we just don't need any more strains
Right.
of this happening. So now that we're kind of caught up a little bit on the background, make sure I
Right.
didn't miss anything.
So this patent is not for. I guess it could apply for all patents, but I think specifically they're talking about Moderna because
Yeah, so a lot of the stuff that we're going to be referencing today is specifically talking about the Moderna vaccine, because that's a lot of what is being talked about as the best option for, or as of right now, the best option for distribution and
right.
overall coverage.
So they're getting ready to patent the Moderna vaccine. And what makes that so special is that it can actually like flare up safely the virus and cause I guess, immunization reaction in your blood system, like other shots do, like the flu shot. Like it can just flare up the COVID in your system, and then your body can create that response, from what I'm understanding.
Not necessarily. The mRNA vaccine doesn't necessarily put like the COVID strain into your body. So what it does is it's a vaccine that doesn't necessarily, it's not like the flu shot, that it doesn't like have a strain of COVID that they put into you, to the way that we're used to having vaccines. In fact, the vaccines that we're seeing are kind of the first of their kind, especially with the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine. But the whole point with the intellectual property and the patent on the intellectual property for this is, now we have people being able to benefit off of selling this patent so people can manufacture it. What that does is it creates a barrier, a financial barrier for a lot of different countries and a lot of different places that can't afford the vaccine on their own, or maybe like they could manufacture it. They have full capacity to manufacture it, but they don't have the patent, so they can't manufacture it legally. It would break laws, but also what we're seeing is there's not a lot of cooperation with vaccine distribution. So we're seeing things out of like the UK with blocking vaccine exports. Or there was a situation with India and the UK with blocking vaccine exports, which ultimately would make it harder for some places to get the vaccine over other places. And it tends, it's prioritizing countries that are wealthy, and unfortunately, this is another instance of prioritizing capitalism over health and safety of humanity, which we see play out over and over again. And what, we're both American, and we have a lot of privileges when it comes to like healthcare and access to healthcare in this way. But what we're seeing is, for some reason, and we've had a lot of pushback from world leaders, and as you saw from the map, UK, Australia, and the US. For some reason, they don't understand that if we can get the entire world vaccinated, we can, or at least 70% of the world vaccinated, and not just in specific places,
right?
We can stop further strains from happening, or at least slow them to where we can keep up with it at a medical capacity.
Right. And from what I understand, it's not just dropping the patent, it's like suspending the patent. So as soon as you get that herd immunity, you can just, implement the patent, right back. Like it never left, so.
Well, and, you made a point, and we've seen some really good points out there of patents aren't for wartime and pandemics. That's not the time. It's specifically so you can profit off of your idea. Right. That's great, but they have had a lot of profit come in both publicly and privately, and the thing is I know everyone's sick of hearing it with their emails. We're in some unprecedented times. There's a whole ass pandemic happening.
Right.
And that's not what patents are for.
Right. So the piggybacking off of what you were just talking about, there's an article in citizen.org. I believe there's this group of scientists that came together and wrote a letter to Dr. Fauci, basically pleading to use that patent and put provisions in it to allow other countries to get access to that type of technology. And I think what was really interesting in it included a universal pricing, because these vaccines are up to about $3 American to produce. And in order to get the vaccine, they may charge you like 10 times that amount, for profit. And
Yeah.
it's really important to point out whenever you're talking about distributing it all around the world, just because there's, different price points for different countries. And it's just like what you said. This is not a competition, this is a global pandemic, and people should have access to it, or else, they may resort to things like using alternatives, like what uh, Trump was talking about whenever he was the president, using hydroxychloroquine
Hmm.
and other malaria alternatives.
And what's unfortunate is they shouldn't have to do that when we have a vaccine for it. And also what you're seeing is like a surplus in America. And I'm speaking specifically from the United States perspective, because that's where I live, and that's what I'm following.
Right.
And I'm using it as an example of like what not to do.
Yeah.
But what you're seeing is you're seeing a surplus in the US, and we're having to beg people to use these before they expire. And there are countries who would really, really like, there are places where they would really like to have this, where they would need it at least for a portion of their population, and we could totally do that. And it would be a shame to have like millions of doses go unused simply because we have an excess, while other places are really striving to get them.
Exactly. Yeah, we in America there is a surplus for the vaccine, while there's other countries that have yet to vaccinate anybody. It's so stark, and
Mhm.
yeah, this is really sad. So let's see. Apparently, there is a legal aspect to using the patents. There is like a specific reason why people do get things patented, and there's an argument that says that, hey, if we lift the patent, then we'll make the materials used to create the vaccine even more difficult, because it's already high in demand since we are in a global pandemic. So if you just lift the patent, then everybody's going to be trying to, do everything in different countries, and it's going to put a strain on production because the materials needed will be even more scarce. So is that something that you would buy as an excuse?
I think it's lazy. We have the capacity to do these things, but what stops us from ending world hunger, ending multiple pandemics, not just the most recent one, is the fact that we try to do this for profit.
Right.
You and I talk about this all the time. This isn't about like making everyone get a vaccine. This is about access. This
Right.
is about access to
Mhm.
healthcare, and like where like I have got to stop using the word like so much because oh my goodness. But it is unfortunate because it's about access. And like I said, we have drugs that make AIDS and HIV undetectable in your body.
Right.
Like your counts are so low that you are undetectable and can possibly not pass it on anymore. But we still have that pandemic raging in every country, especially
Right.
people who don't have access to those drugs. You talked about malaria earlier,
Mhm.
um, and now we're here with COVID, and it's one of those things that we should like. It can stop. We can stop that.
Right.
Um, we just have to be willing to, and it just seems like we're not willing to.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It doesn't really sound like a strong argument because, like you said, we're already in a surplus. So, why would the materials be high in demand whenever America is already in a surplus in terms of creating the vaccine? Won't they allow other countries to, create their own versions and, use that technology to, maybe make it better? But
Mhm.
um, let's see. You said if we allow this to go unchecked, then there will be, more even stronger variants. So I think that is an even
Yeah.
stronger argument to suspend the patents, because if we get the entire world vaccinated, then we wouldn't have to worry about this anymore. It goes similarly to what was the it was in the article about World War II, penicillin. What was that? Was that what it was?
I think that was talking about penicillin at one point. Yeah.
Yes. So in the article, it said there's
making access to penicillin.
yeah, they're saying there was
better.
precedent. It was precedent for like for health officials to suspend patents on something that's so pressing, because at one point during the Second World War, America was like the only country creating penicillin. And they didn't worry about like suing people and like charging people for royalties and all that. It was just, you know, we need to vaccinate our soldiers so they can be safe and come back home safely and this, that, and the other. So there's already precedent for suspending patents in like, you know, trying times. And it's not like it's a competition. No, it's really not a competition. So yeah.
Well, and like we see, you know, borders are useless. They don't mean shit. That's what people put to like that's just what people put there. They're not real.
Right.
Viruses and diseases don't care about borders. They're not real things. Hence why we're in a global pandemic, because they don't care. And so that's why, you know, that's why you see, you know, a strain that was you know, first showed up in the UK spreading to places like the US and Brazil and other places in Europe. And it's viruses don't give a fuck about your borders.
Yeah,
they just don't.
Yeah, so you said you gonna say something?
No, I was just pointing out.
Yeah.
I just got passionate while I was moving my hands.
Yeah, you made a good point. Yeah, so you sent this article about the malaria. I kind of want to talk about the malaria virus because that is something that's even more dangerous than COVID. It killed just as many people in Africa as COVID did in America last year. And, you know, malaria is mostly just focused in Africa. Kills about 400,000 people a year. And it's mostly young kids. And they're just now getting a vaccine that has a over 70% efficacy rate, which I believe the World Health Organization, they strive for 75, but anything above 70 is functional, basically. Mm-hmm. So pretty much up until now, they were working with something that was like at best 55%. So to have something that's 77% is amazing. And they're just now getting this vaccine, you know, created for people. And it's been a problem since before COVID. Malaria has been a thing since before COVID. So to just now have a functional vaccine for people, what do you think that means? Because for COVID to be around for like just 1 year, and we have multiple vaccines that are like, you know, in the 90s, and
you know
a malaria drug in Africa that is just now being created, and it's only 77%, but it's still good. I think that, well, what would you like to say? Because I just set it up for you to, you know, slam dunk it.
Well, you know about like institutional and systemic racism and how it affects the whole world. I will say that, yeah, I mean, especially with the infection rate that we had in 2019 with malaria and 2020 with malaria, mm-hmm. It's not like we didn't have like opportunities to test a vaccine for them, for people who have malaria. And yeah, ultimately what that is that's another case of what we're seeing now of not prioritizing it because it doesn't affect all the countries buying up the COVID vaccines. I think we said it earlier, the really selfish rich countries, which let's remember how they got to where they are.
Yeah, I suspect if malaria was global, like COVID, then we may have much safer, stronger drugs, to combat malaria. But since it's only in Africa, I think that says a lot about it. But there was a vaccine that was actually used as a blueprint from this malaria drug, AstraZeneca. They
Oh, okay.
they used that um, using the malaria blueprint because apparently malaria is a lot more complex of a virus than COVID. So I think that's even crazier that they've, been able to find something so successful, and it's even more difficult to combat. But yeah, I think it's good that there's multiple, vaccines coming out for
Oh
coronavirus.
yeah.
But yeah, it's just the patents. I think that's a real stumbling block, and it may not do anything to actually suspend the patents or lift the patents. It may not do anything functionally, but it definitely does send a message that says, hey, like we will put the greater good above profits.
Well, yeah, and each place is gonna have its own like challenges, um,
Yeah.
and it's gonna have to be a cooperative effort. But I think a cooperative effort starts with making it available to be cooperative in the first place, like making available for the vaccine to be cooperative in the first place, to be able to
Yeah.
be held in a cooperative environment more so than what it is right now. Rolling out vaccines in the US is going to look completely different than how it would look in Chile, than how it would look in New Zealand, than how it would look in Tanzania.
Yeah.
It's going to look completely different in all those places. That I don't think that that's a valid argument. Like you were saying, I just kind of think that that's not a valid argument for not taking a step to do something,
Right.
because this seems like a very crucial step in that cooperative effort.
Right. And we're already having variants pop up in like not even developing countries. Like there was the one in London that popped up
Mm-hmm.
out of nowhere. And I just think it just works if we can get everybody kind of done at once, because the way it's going now, you would have all the Western world vaccinated by the end of this year, and then another 2 years before, the rest of the world could catch up. And the rest of the world constitutes about 80% of the
80% of our
population.
population.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there will
Well,
be,
and
I was going to say, there is definitely going to be variants that pop up from like now in 2 years. So.
well, yeah, and remember, variants happen whenever it can like transmit and mutate easily. It doesn't have to happen in like certain environments necessarily, just a place where a lot of people have the ability to catch and pass on a virus. It doesn't have to be, it's not just, yeah. I mean, so just anywhere where there would be less than, I think what the World Health Organization was saying was 70%
Okay. Yeah.
vaccination
Right.
is ripe real estate for this guy.
Mhm.
This guy being COVID-19. I don't know why I referred to it as a. I'm not trying to humanize the virus. Let's keep going with that.
This guy.
This guy.
Well, I will say, I think we're kind of good unless you want to make some more points. But I will say that the one silver lining is that Biden is questioning the merits of having intellectual property, on these vaccines, because going back to Moderna, um, I believe the mRNA drug specific, or the mRNA specifically used for Moderna is used by other countries anyways. So I think that's a good step, that out of all the Western countries, you have Biden that's actually like, questioning, oh, should we, lift it?
That
Is it really like
that
helpful
has
to?
taken that has taken a lot of pushing though, because whenever I first heard about this, like 5 weeks ago, he was like, no, I'm not really thinking, I don't even want to do it. So that's news to me that he
Okay.
is starting to like think about it, because that's definitely a lot of pushing from like organizations like what you've read, and that letter like what you've
Right.
read, because he was definitely one of the opponents to sharing patents and information about it.
He was one of the proponents or opponent?
Opponents. I hate that
Opponent.
those words are so close together.
He's one of
Guys who didn't want to.
right. Yeah. So, well, in the article, it's on nature.com. The article is called "It's Time to Consider a Patent Reprieve for COVID Vaccines." It does say that he's questioning the merits of IPs for the vaccines. So
That's good to
I don't know
hear.
what specific merits he's questioning, but he's you know, because he could say something that's not even on the on the spectrum of what.
Well, merits mean a lot of things, and I've been burned before, so it's like
Yes, yes, we definitely have.
we
But
love him thinking about it. We'd really, really like it if he just, did the thing.
exactly. So, what I would say, bottom line is, even if lifting the patents doesn't do anything, like immediately tangible, it definitely does, send the right message that, these corporations are willing to cooperate with the rest of the world and willingly give their IPs over, to help the world, because it's not always about profits, but yeah.
Well, and you mentioned something that I kind of wanted to. Oh, there's two things I wanted to circle back to, because you mentioned making it like an affordable and a basic price, and not
A universal price, yeah.
a universal price. You had talked about it earlier, kind of being akin to like universal basic income, but ultimately that's just access again.
Right.
But then I wanted to mention, like from within the United States, a lot of the indigenous communities, which are separate nations in our country, secured vaccines for their entire, or for, as every nation's different. There's over 500 different nations, indigenous nations in the United States.
Oh, wow.
But specifically talking within Oklahoma, some of the bigger nations here secured vaccines for all of their citizens that wanted them. They had extra, and they held drives so that people who weren't their citizens but lived within their boundaries, or even bordered their boundaries,
Yeah.
could get vaccinated. And they made it available before it was even available to anyone under 60 in California. And
Nice.
and it's one of those things of cooperation. It's understanding this doesn't just affect me, and diseases don't give a fuck. So we need to make sure everyone is safe. Of course, they made sure their citizens were vaccinated first, and then they spread the love, if you will, and they opened it to people who wanted to get vaccinated. And let me tell you, that is one of the reasons why places like Oklahoma and New Mexico have had a really good rollout with.
Nice.
And it's because of nation sharing. Like, it's because of sharing between nations ultimately.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Like the press secretary, Jim Paskey, is that how you say it? She was basically saying that she was getting a question about, what the president plans to do with the surplus. And she said, "Oh, we're just worried about getting our people vaccinated because there still are 1,000 people dying a day." So, she's gonna say the right things, but what are you gonna do with that surplus? Is this a real question?
Yeah.
No. Did you have a second point you want to double back to? Or no?
No, the only other thing I was gonna say is that's really it's just a whole different way that like a lot of the indigenous nations chose to approach that, compared to at the beginning of the pandemic, when they asked for like PPE and masks, and they were sent body bags.
Oh, wow.
So it's a very different way of like how nations treat each other, because the US like just kind of spit in their face, and they were like, okay, we're done vaccinating our people, let's get everyone if we can.
Yeah. It is what
it is. It's a stark contrast. And it's definitely something to take note of.
Yeah. So bottom line, just know how to read the room.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Just understand the situation. So that's all we're
Mhm,
asking.
pretty
So
much.
yeah, I think we're good for today. We're gonna wrap it up.
That was a quick
Nice little
one.
moment. Yeah, yeah, we comprehensive. We're ready for it.
We did. We went. That was great. That was fantastic. All right.
All right, yeah, perfect. So I think we're gonna end it there. It's a good pod. We will be back next, maybe.
Next week. Yeah, it'll
Yeah,
be great. We'll shoot for it. We've got some awesome topics lined up to get back to. So we're super stoked about it.
awesome. All right, well, I'll see you then.
All right.
Peace
Later.
out. Later.